All right, first episode, IllumiNation Network Podcast. I want to thank Casper here for joining me.
I want to thank you for having me.
So a little bit about this podcast, we're going to be doing all sorts of light worker interviews. We're going to be doing, talking about various healing modalities, efficacy, what works, what doesn't, and just uniting around the ideas that are going to bring the collective, the healing that they're looking for. So with that, this first episode is going to be about True Sidereal Astrology, the system that I personally think is the most efficable. And just talking a little bit about that, how much, I chose this because of how much it revolves around my life and how much it revolves around Casper's life here, because he's a fellow True Sidereal astrologer.
Oh, yes.
Without further ado, let's tell people what astrology is, what it does.
Yeah. Well, like you said, for me, astrology for the past 2 years has been probably the biggest consistent factor in my life for personal guidance, for understanding myself, for understanding the events in my life, and also for kind of seeing the bigger picture of things that were happening in my life. And like I was telling you earlier, when I started to connect not just the theoretical practice of astrology, because there's a lot of theory, like you have to know what each planet represents and the signs and the aspects they make to each other. So that's basically the mathematical, theoretical side of astrology. But there's also like the beautiful side of just stargazing, of just going outside and looking at the night sky and seeing what's out there and seeing what angles and what configurations the planets are making. And I feel like that's the beauty of sidereal astrology, is that it also connects to the astronomy. It's not just theoretical, it's also very practical, and you can observe it in real time. So that's when that magic, like astrology has always been really magical to me. But when I remember, it was in October 2020, and I was really like relaxed and just lying on the floor and looking at the stars. And then I learned my first constellation, which was Aquila, which is the eagle. And I read up about it and the mythology, and it just really fascinated me, and it really resonated with something I was going through in my personal life at the time. And from that moment, I fell in love with the actual constellations and learning more about them, and just really vibing with what's out in the night sky.
Would you say that eagle became something of like a spirit animal for that chapter?
Oh yes, and it still is. I feel like that was an initiation of my eagle phase, which as a Scorpio true note, so I'll explain a little bit about that for the people that aren't as well versed in astrology. So we all have a true node, which represents in our chart the area, basically our destiny's gate, the energy we're moving towards in this lifetime, the energy our soul wants to experience more of in this lifetime. In many ways, that energy doesn't feel very comfortable to us because it's new and it's something that we're still learning to understand. But once you realize what your true node is, your north node path is, it makes so much more sense, because you start to see why certain things don't work out and what you're actually being asked to move towards. And for me, my north node is in Scorpio. So Scorpio represents rebirth, transformation, like basically all the processes in life that have to do with destruction and then creating something from that. It's pure alchemy, basically. It's transforming one form into another. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. And that's also what the eagle symbolism ties into, is that it starts out with the scorpion. So that's the first stage of Scorpio, which is crawling, it's territorial, it's defensive, it's not so sure of its surroundings, it's still learning about itself. And once a certain level of consciousness has reached about itself, it transcends and it transforms into the eagle, which is still a predator. It's still looking for things. It's still like hunting. So it's still a little bit of that ego energy, but it has a much broader perspective and much more freedom. and much more, I would say a much more defined direction than the Scorpion does. And that's like basically the stage I felt like I was entering into in that point, like going from the Scorpion stage of my true node into the Eagle stage of my true node. So like it was a really symbolic moment. And the Eagle has definitely been like a spirit animal that I keep connecting to, and that keeps reminding me to look at the bigger picture and to always be very aware of my surroundings and what I'm creating.
It sounds like the change from like an instinctual state to like a highly focused, like goal-oriented state.
Yeah, that's it. That's basically it. Yeah. That's the main. And then the Phoenix, or the last stage, is when you transcend that need to kind of conquer and achieve. So that's the Eagle still. It's still very like focused on hunting and stuff. And when the Phoenix, in the Phoenix stage, you kind of transcend that and you fully bloom into just your authentic free self, and you just flow. And like, you know, as a Phoenix, you just shine your light and flow, and there's no hunting, there's no having to compete with anything. It's just pure beingness. So that's the final stage. That's the enlightened stage of the Scorpion, of the Scorpio process of transformation. And Scorpio is just such a transformative, powerful energy to work with. So if you have a lot of Scorpio in your chart, definitely look into this symbolism of these stages and maybe see where you're at personally. You know, like it's very helpful in understanding your process if you have a lot of Scorpio placements, for sure.
I personally have Jupiter, the planet of expansion, of growth, also in my 6th house, which represents routine, daily grind. So I kind of see that, like, you know, the more I'm focused on diving deep, of following my instincts, of doing what I know I need to do, the more I see that kind of reward me as the cycle comes back. Just to explain astrology as a concept further, we look at this in terms of like a science and an art form. And, you know, from being here on Earth, all the constellations that we're familiar with, the 12 that most everyone are familiar with, these are the stars that are most closest to us. And so what we're looking at when we're looking at astrology is we're looking at, you know, what planet is closest to what stars. And just like how gravity kind of works, it's kind of pulling the energy into the planet, and then that planet's energy is pulling to Earth. And it's not necessarily gravity, but we're seeing it in terms of awareness as light. And this is all just like a system for us to record waves, I guess. And so this all came about, you know, throughout hundreds of thousands of generations. You know, as soon as we could look up at the stars and wonder what the heck that was, we were starting to, you know, look at differences and similarities between different time periods and say like, oh, I see Aries up ahead. You know, this is kind of what today's been like. And then recording it, passing stories to their children, their grandchildren. And here we are thousands of years later, coming back to reinvent the system with True Sidereal. Because as we know it in the Western world, as you and I probably call it most often, seasonal astrology, it follows the seasons and tries to align the first sign of Aries with the start of spring. But since that system was installed, since that system was sort of put in concrete in the 2nd century by the historian, the scholar Ptolemy, you know, it never took into account what's called the precession of the equinox. This is Earth, you know, wobbling a little bit. Our rotational axis isn't a perfect circle. It's like a top. You know, once the top kind of slows down a little bit, it starts wobbling like this. And essentially that changes our pole. That changes, you know, the degree that we're facing the sky by about 1 degree every 70 years. So since the conception of the modern system, the Western system as we know it, astrology has grown off by about 30 degrees. to where, that may be a large reason as to why society doesn't value astrology to the same degree anymore, because when they hear that something's in Leo or something's in Cancer, it doesn't really resonate. They're like, I don't really see that. It doesn't make sense. And I think the reason that is, I personally theorize the reason that is because when you go up to look at the night sky, just as our ancestors did, it's in a completely different place. It's 30 degrees over.
Yeah, 100%. And like you were saying, it's much more Western astrology, seasonal astrology is much more symbolic in a way. It's not very tangible. It's kind of, it's more and this is not a judgment, because I also have a really big woo side, but it's definitely more of the woo esoteric side of astrology. And there's a lot of I'm not dissing, because that's also how I learned. There's a lot of brilliant astrologers that use that system, but that also shows that there's, like the constellations are just one factor. Because these astrologers, they still read the aspects, they still read the the configurations, they still tune into their intuition, which is a really big part of astrology. It's you have to also work with your intuition and what messages are you receiving from the configurations, what are you perceiving within yourself from what's going outside. This principle of as above so below, we can really tune into these energies if we really want to. But again, like you were saying, I sometimes feel like the story around the zodiac belt, the 12 signs and stuff, at some point it didn't resonate with me anymore. It was like, what is this based on, and why does Leo, which is such a big constellation and has different stars with each with its own energy, the sun in the tail of the lion is completely different from the sun in the head of the lion. Like there's a different frequency there, and that's something that a lot of the time is not considered in Western astrology. So that's why I feel like it tends to be a little bit more vague. There's still a lot of value in it, because it's just a very developed. Western astrology is very developed. There's a lot of research and a lot of great astrologers that are working in it. But for me personally, and also for you as well, of course, we feel like the connection to the truth, to like the way that the universe is structured, and like our solar system works and the night sky and all of these things, it feels off. It's like it doesn't match the reality. It doesn't match the truth, which is that everything is frequency, and like you were saying, everything is light. So like you were saying, these stars, they're literally spectral sources of light and information that come in to us on Earth and align with our earthly cycles. And that's something that I feel personally I can much more tune into when I'm looking at the actual position of the constellations and the actual position of the planets relative to the constellations and to the stars within those constellations. And that's one part of my favorite part about True Sidereal Astrology is working with the stars, with the fixed stars, and understanding their energies more, especially the Bohemian stars. Those were a set of 15 stars that a lot of Arabic astrologers, which I feel like if I want to learn one system of astrology better, it's Arabic astrology, because I feel like they were just so advanced. They were amazing. They were so advanced for their time, and their data observations and all of the basically fixed star astrology is largely based on Arab observations and interpretations. And
there's so many different systems too. There's the Druid astrology, there's the native astrology. And even if they don't perfectly align with the night sky as we like to do in our system, the history that they have behind it, and comparing archetypes, comparing energies and aspects, that all has some truth to it that can be derived no matter how deep into that particular practice you've gone.
Yeah, I'm really interested in Druid astrology as well. I'm definitely gonna check that out one day.
Yeah,
it sounds really definitely
cool. One of my favorite things about True Sidereal Astrology is almost having like an inner map of where everything is. And when I go outside and look at the sky, I'm like, oh, there's Taurus. I know Mars is right there. I can see it. And it's so
Yeah,
exciting and it
it
feels
is.
so real.
It does. Yeah. 100%. I really resonate with that. And especially when the most beautiful moments in my life, um, and that's why I have such a deep passion for astrology, because I remember, I'm gonna give you guys one really beautiful example. Is I was going through a very difficult time I would say a year and a half ago, where I was accepting that at my home at the time, I wasn't happy. I wasn't thriving. I didn't feel like, even though I loved my home and I wanted so much to make it work and to invest more in it and to grow my own garden, I just felt like something was telling me, no, it's not the time yet. You have to go out into the world. And I remember there was this one evening where I just was in my front yard, and I looked at my home and my trees, and I just started weeping and feeling so much sadness and regret, and um, just being like, I'm really sorry, home, that right now, like, I can't show up for you in the way that I want to, and just really connecting deeply to my feelings, like really deep feelings uh, around property, which is, your home and my security and my sense of belonging.
Mhm.
And then I looked, I kid you not, I looked at the astrology afterwards, like the Sidereal Astrology app I use. And I saw that in that moment that I had that really big release. It was a huge release because afterwards I felt much better and I felt very grateful for being able to admit that. I realized that the full moon, it had just been full moon, uh, had just passed over my North Node,
Oh,
literally at the moment that I had that release. And as I was still telling, the North Node is, in my opinion, probably especially for light workers, the point that everyone should know, and understand. Like I feel like
so
everyone should
the
understand their North
planetary
Node.
body for emotions aligned with your purpose in this life.
Yeah, yeah, and
That's amazing.
that was allowing me to have this, and it's my North Node is in Scorpio, so that's again an energy of transmutation. It's an energy of burning something old that doesn't serve, and then freeing yourself and alchemizing with those emotions, with those very deep, painful emotions, but actually having that become your power, and actually having that become your liberation. So I felt all of that, and it totally tied into the themes of my North Node and of Scorpio, and of that full moon. So, and also, even with the fact that it was about my home, which is also something that Scorpio energy is often attributed to, is like your territory, like what is yours, what is yours to protect. And I was feeling guilty that I couldn't, that I didn't feel like I could stay much longer in the place that I felt I was meant to protect, that I was meant to have as my safety, as my territory. And so that's it. That moment was when I truly let go of all my doubts about astrology, because often when you're still learning about astrology, there will be moments of doubt. There will be moments of not sure what to believe, not sure what is true, because there's especially as you get into it, it's a lot of information. Like, this is something that like, not it's not for everybody, that's for sure, because it's
Mhm.
a lot of information, it's a lot of data, it's a lot of processing. But the moment you start to connect that to your everyday experiences and your intuition, that's when it really becomes magical, and that's when you really start to see that really important events in your life relate to the astrology and relate
Yeah,
to the interactions of the planets with your own chart and your own planets. So
and
yeah, that moment was very
the
magical. Yeah.
that is some of the biggest magic of astrology is predicting. Is that, like, if someone goes and gets like a true sidereal chart made, and they say, okay, one of the most integral moments of my life, one of the most powerful transformational moments of my life was 2 years, 6 months, and 14 days ago, or something like that, and they go back and look at it, they'll find something there. They will. And just like that, you know, you can look into the future. You can look into like, when am I going to have kids? When do I am
Mm-hmm.
possibly going to meet my partner? All these kinds of things align to just be like, it's like a roadmap. It's showing you all the aspects, and if you know how it works, you can see how an influence is going to come. You may not know exactly how it's going to come, but in being prepared, we're ready to ride whatever wave comes before us.
Definitely, definitely. And I always say astrology is a potential, and it's the energy. It's basically the energy potential that's available to us. And we have the free will to do with that what we can, but we can, like that's why people say, okay, so why did this prediction not come out, or like whatever. It's because it's not necessarily like a really concrete prediction. It's
Mhm.
more like what we see is like, okay, this is an energy potential for these themes to come up, and these situations to come up, these challenges to come up, these lessons to come up. But the
Mhm.
way that they manifest is very unique, like you said. It depends on so many other factors, and also what you do with it is up to your free will. Like, for example, you could have like a Jupiter conjunct Venus on your natal Jupiter, and astrologically that should be like a time where you're really expanding in your generosity, or like just your heart is like it will completely open, and you will attract so many loving experiences into your life. But if you're actively sabotaging that, or like you're like, I don't want love in my life, I'm gonna
Yeah.
like that, like you still, it's astrology is a potential. It will definitely create certain potentials in your life where you're seeing certain themes come up and certain situations. But what we do with that is still our free will. And that's why I think it's so beautiful to understand, at least. And I think you'll agree with me on this. I feel like you don't need to be a professional at astrology, but I feel like even just understanding how the moon cycle works,
Mhm.
that's a really big start. Like if everyone were to understand, okay, during a full like I always use this example, like if there's a dark moon, don't like if there's a dark moon and a Mercury retrograde, for example, happening at the same time.
Mhm.
Like, I'll explain a little bit more about what a dark moon is after this, but it's basically like, don't expect to start a new business, or don't expect to manifest this or this thing, or don't be too upset when you're really pushing and it's just not going, because a dark moon phase is the last part of the lunar cycle. So it's the moment where the moon loses most of her light. It's right before the new moon, and that's a phase. It's a very feminine yin surrender phase. It's a phase when we're just supposed to kind of like lay back and just relax and process, and maybe do a detox or a fast.
Mhm.
Like the energy during a dark moon is not for action. So if you're going to start taking or trying to take action during that time, astrology may help us understand why it doesn't work, or why it might work, because we always have free will. And if you really put your energy in it, you will manifest. But we will understand why certain moments of the month are much more fruitful than
Mhm.
other moments to produce, and why other moments are much more fruitful to just reap the results, or just lay back and just do nothing. So it's literally a cycle that, once we understand that, our lives become so much more easy, because we can, I feel like that's the biggest one. And I'm sure you can relate as a Cancer also. It allows you, when you understand these cycles, it allows you to also be much more compassionate with yourself and with others.
Mhm. And it,
Because
it gets a lot more personal when people know where their moon is. And if it's in the opposite place, how that'll impact them. You know,
yeah,
like a fire versus an air sign, or an earth versus a water. Um, you know, and also it's just speaking on, you know, those who maybe doubt the efficacy of astrology, or of true sidereal astrology, because something didn't happen for them that they expected to happen. You know, it's very much like, you have to constantly be living in the moment, and not just choosing which moments you want to live in. You know, if you're just waiting for this one moment where everything's going to come together, but you didn't do the groundwork to get it, all you're going to see is the groundwork you needed to have done to get it. And that's going to feel disappointing when you're expecting a big release. But, this comes with always staying present, always doing the work, and being ready for when the ball drops.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely feel that.
So just to give people a little bit more of an idea of the differences between true sidereal astrology and Western seasonal astrology, one of the biggest reasons I chose to follow this system was because of the science aspects of it and how it aligns with astronomy. Because the seasonal system says 12 signs, all of them are 30 degrees, not even a single degree different for another sign. And that's just not true. So I'm going to share my screen here.
Awesome.
And
let's look at some. I love it.
What we're looking at here is Aries. This is the first sign in the zodiac. This represents fire. This represents, springtime. It's a cardinal sign. It's very much, moving quickly. It's taking the initiative. And it's pretty large. I'd say Aries is anywhere from like 15 to 20 degrees. But then you come over to the second sign, the Earth sign, and you see Taurus, and look how much longer that is in comparison to this small little ram.
Yeah.
And and
dude,
so
I love all of that, and I love all of that energy in Aries right now. Like, look at that. Like, we have 4 planets in Aries right now, astrologically, and Uranus has been sitting there for a while. So yeah, that's a lot of activation in Aries right now.
Definitely. This whole last lunar cycle was helping us to get more aligned, going from a new moon in Pisces to a full moon in Virgo, and now a second full moon in Virgo, right at the start of when the sun is entering Aries, as well as, Mercury and Venus following close behind, and Uranus having been here a while, but still feeling a lot of influence from the sun coming right here. But yeah, one of the biggest aspects of true sidereal astrology is using science, using astronomy, using telescopes and the modern telescopic technology to map out exactly how big each sign is. And so they're all different sizes. And let's see, we can see the orbit here.
Do you have a way of showing the ecliptic?
Yeah.
So the ecliptic is the sun's path through the signs, which is how we determine which signs we use in astrology. So the zodiac wheel, so to speak.
And all of the planets, all of the planetary bodies within our system follow this same line. And conveniently, these are some of the closest stars to our system. So there's something to be said about the influence they have on us.
Yeah.
But look at tiny little Cancer, this little baby crab. He's not nearly as big as this proud lion over here. Not to say he doesn't have his own power, his own influence, but to say that they're both equally 30 degrees is just not factual.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, when I started to get more into this, I also started to see how the size of the constellations also represents the importance and the amount of, I guess, consciousness that the themes that the constellations represent take up in our lives. For example, Virgo is one of the biggest constellations, and the things that Virgo rule are actually some of the biggest things in our lives, like our routines, our health, our daily rituals, our work, our service, reaping what we sow, collecting the harvest, discerning what's good and what's not. Like, this energy is something that's very present in our lives, in our consciousness, and that's why Virgo is huge. It's like because it takes up a lot of consciousness. And I started to notice how the size of the constellations represent the importance. While, for example, the things that Cancer, we were talking about Cancer. Cancer by contrast represents a relatively small part of our lives. Like it's basically the home where we feel safe. It's very important. It's very crucial, but it's not as it doesn't take up as much of a bandwidth in our consciousness as the Virgo energy does. And
Virgo
that's
represents Divine Mother. She's everything that's nurturing. She's everything that's, taking care of
yeah,
our lives. And just like you said, our routines representing the sixth house.
yeah.
Even the story of Jesus way back in the day, I'd heard some information from author Micah Dank, where he was referencing how Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but the words for Bethlehem, Bethel, I don't know the actual Hebrew words, but essentially Bethlehem represents house of bread. It represents Virgo. The stars they were following were leading them to Bethlehem. They were leading them to Virgo.
When I channel Virgo energy, I also really often connect to Mary Magdalene, like that archetype of unconditional service, unconditional nurturance, like serving humanity, serving the world, serving the earth. That's really what Virgo represents as the Earth Mother, as the nurturing. It's a very grounded way of nurturing. It's showing up day to day and just taking care of things and making sure that everyone's all right and that everything's all right. And that's really what Mary Magdalene also represented to Jesus. She was always there as his support, as the one that was taking care of everything and that was holding the faith, and that was she wasn't the front leader, but she was just as essential. And that's also what Virgo represents. That's why you will often see that people with a lot of Virgo energy are drawn to administrative tasks and like household type tasks and cooking and health and maybe nutrition, because these are not necessarily things that put you in the spotlight, but they're very essential to maintaining a healthy connection to yourself and to maintaining a healthy connection to your life on earth. And that's really what Virgo represents. So it's beautiful because that's also what this full moon is highlighting for us. It's in Virgo, and it's basically asking us, with all this Aries energy that we've been having, which is about stepping more into our purpose and initiating some things that we've been thinking about and incubating for a while now. I feel like now we're being asked to take the step, the leap. And Virgo is like, okay, but if you want to do that, you have to clean up some shit first, and that's this full moon. It's like, what are we still holding on to? Where are we still holding attachments to certain outcomes that are keeping us from really living in alignment with basically the energy that we need to take those initiations. For example, let's say in my case, like one of the Aries things that's really been coming up for me is like, I want to really create my own website, right? I want to really take the leap on that. But this Virgo full moon is showing me, okay, well, you can do that, but in order for that, you need to have a routine, you need to have a structure, you need to have a very concrete step-to-step plan, which is also Virgo. It's that very grounded level of structure, and just take the steps to get there. It's great to have the fire, but you also need the earth to materialize what you want to manifest. And I feel like this is what this full moon is really highlighting for us, is where do we need to make some physical changes to our structure, to our routines, and also to the way that we treat ourselves, the way that we show up for ourselves. And this can also be mental, because we do have Mercury also in Aries. So this is also like, where are we maybe with our minds, where are our minds not organized, right? Where are our minds still all over the place and not aligned with those steps that we want to take? So I feel like this full moon is a very powerful one to just write, to just do some writing, some journaling, and just being very, because that's also Virgo, being very discerning, being very honest with ourselves and being like, okay, where is my life not in alignment? Where is my life not organized? Where is my life um, not basically not serving the greater purpose that I'm here for, which is also Virgo. It also represents that sense of mission of service to Gaia, to Mother Earth. So where am I not in alignment with my service and the mission I set out to achieve on this world? And that's what Aries is now sounding the kind of like the battle cry with Uranus that I've been talking to you about. It's like we're really being kind of ushered into that awakening, into that initiation. And this full moon represents where we really ground ourselves into that initiation and make like an oath to ourselves to take better care of ourselves and take better care of our structures and our routines and to live a life that feels, because it's also with Venus, it has to feel in alignment. It doesn't have to just mentally look or seem in alignment, like if you have a structure or a routine but it doesn't feel good to you, then like it's not doing much for you. So it's with Venus, it's also about, does it feel good to us? Does it feel like with the structure and routine that we have, like can we work with that? Can we move forward with that? Or do we maybe need to spice it up or spruce it up? Because it is a full moon in Virgo, but it's a lot of Aries energy. Definitely. So it is also like asking us to make our routines more active and more fun. So this is the full moon to be like, okay, you know what? It's time for me. Like I've been wanting to commit to that yoga class, or like I've been wanting to commit to that, like even if it's just taking a walk once a week, or just anything to up our connection to our body and our physical health and how we take care of that. This is the perfect full moon to just do one thing. And I feel like this is important to mention because with this Aries overflow of energy, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed, like we're like this, we're going into overdrive. And I want to really focus that it's important to also take it slow at the same time, and just even one tiny change that you can make during this full moon, but that will have a really big impact on your day-to-day experience and how you go through your day, will be super good to implement during this time. So during this time of the podcast, for the rest of the week, I would even say, because the energy kind of, it's like a shockwave. It doesn't just dissipate all at once, it ripples out. And I feel like just any commitment, so just one thing, like I'm going to do yoga once a week, I'm going to take a walk every maybe once a week. Start with just once a week, if you feel, if like that's already beautiful. And
Aries is just asking us to show up.
Literally, yeah. Showing up and doing the damn thing.
Another thing about Virgo that I think a lot of people look over is that, it sounds mundane. It sounds, very tedious to think about routine, to think about, gardening and cooking and, brushing your teeth. But these are the things that create the base of the pyramid. Without these things, you won't have a clean house to have company over. You won't have the vegetables to provide food. Virgo is the base of the pyramid. She is divine feminine, and her counterpart Gemini being divine masculine. It's very much more of the go-getter, whereas it takes the spotlight. It's very charismatic, but this is it's not flashy. It's not flamboyant. It's structured. It's brick by brick. And
it's very down to earth. I love it.
Yeah.
But in it, like you were saying, in a very actually it's about, like you were saying, seeing this is also a good full moon, tying into that, is remembering the divinity and doing that, right? And the beauty and the honor in just grounding and doing our chores and Am I still visible, by the way, or is my
I think your
camera off?
screen just turned off.
Okay, wait, let me see if I can come back with my video. Okay, I think I'm back.
There
All
you
right. Yeah, so Virgo, like with Virgo, it's also about remembering and actually seeing it as a celebration. That's often when I connect with Virgo energy, it's about celebrating the fact that we were born from Mother Earth, and that we have all these ways of connecting with her, and all these rituals that help us feel nourished and help us feel alive and help us feel healthy. So like you were saying, cooking and doing the dishes, these are also ways of connecting on a very deep level to our bodies and to our or to our presence.
go.
When you're doing the dishes, you could either, be in your mind, or like, not enjoying it, but you could also be totally present and appreciate, like, for example, thank you for serving, being an object on which I serve my food that I just cooked, another Virgo thing, with a lot of love from the ingredients, another Virgo thing that I harvested from my garden, another Virgo thing that I tended to with so it's really about what you reap, what you sow, and being grateful for the beauty and the miraculousness of that. So I love that you mentioned that it's not just mundane. It's actually the basically the founding, I would say, the pillar of on which physical existence on this earth is possible. And that is divine, that is beautiful, that is fundamental.
And
And
so
I
Aries is asking us to sow these seeds. It's asking us to plant them, because just showing up is going to continue to bring the rewards. Even though the moon is going to pass through Virgo, this whole month is influenced by this Virgo full moon.
Yeah, 100%. And then the new moon in Aries, which is in 2 weeks, is I feel like now with we're kind of I feel like this is the moment to implement some of these structural changes, which is Virgo, like these routine changes, these ways of relating to ourselves and being more present. I feel like these next 2 weeks would be a really good time for us to practice being more present with our bodies, with our health, because we're clearing the space over the next 2 weeks. Is the waning moon, so it's a more yin energy, where we're being asked to release what we observe that is standing in our way of maybe living more aligned with our bodies and with our health, and maybe also literally, because if you want to achieve Aries type of things, and sow and produce, you need to have a certain level of energy and a certain level of groundedness for that. And this full moon is asking us to let go of things that stand in the way of feeling energetic, of feeling taken care of feeling provided, so that during the next new moon, which is in Aries, that jumping a little bit ahead here, but I can give you guys a little bit of a heads up on that. That will be like, that's the initiation point. Like that new moon is like, okay,
That's the moment where we're glad that we sowed the seeds.
Yeah. And so this is preparation, and that's what Virgo does best. It's making the bed and making the house and doing the administration and doing the groundwork, literally. And also I feel like, especially during 2020 and just this time, it's very easy for us to get very caught up in things and to worry about maybe the future, or maybe about this. And
People
basically
are thinking about just getting to the next day, not even speaking about the next month.
Yeah, 100%. And I want people to remember, and also for ourselves and for myself, a reminder is that we're fine. Like if we really think about it, if we really look back, like, the worries that we have in most moments, most of them don't come to fruition. Most of them don't really happen. So for this Virgo full moon is also asking us to ground into a deeper level of presentness, right? Where we just learn to just be more, just to be more, and not to always jump into the future or
be caught in the planning mode.
Yeah, be caught in the planning mode, be caught in the news mode, be caught in the worrying about what the government's doing, or like what you should be doing, or where your life's going to be. It's also because the last new moon was in Pisces, so the theme of this whole lunar cycle is about surrendering a bit more and just trusting. So this Virgo as moon is also like about, okay, part of that surrendering, part of that trusting is just to just be more, and just be more present, and just be more grateful for what already is in the moment, and not always, like want more.
Projecting our mind into reality.
Yeah.
With that, I think this is a great opportunity to invite ourselves and the audience to become more grounded, more present. So I'd just like to do a quick exercise. We'll take 3 breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, really focusing on relieving any tension. And then 3 breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. So a total of 6 breaths, however you feel like doing them. So beginning, exhale. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. And 6. It's amazing how just taking a few focused breaths can put us right back into the groove of being right here, observing, listening, receiving awareness. And thanking the full moon for this opportunity.
That's where the real magic happens. It's the present. It's just being here right now, and I'm just really grateful to be here and to be talking to you, and just like, I don't know, like after those breaths, I really feel, we can talk, and humans love to talk and think, but feeling is such a big part of it. And breathing, yoga, like all of these things, guys, these things are so important during these times. It's really important for us to connect to our body's intelligence as much as we can. And Virgo is a really beautiful reminder of that, of being more in touch with ourselves and our daily lives and our presentness. And just, I'm now looking at my home and I'm like, holy shit. Like, I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful for everything that I have.
Yeah.
And when I go through my day to day, I would like to take more time to be grateful for that and to be more present. And I feel like that's what my intention for this full moon is. My affirmation is, I am present and I'm grateful. I am present and I'm grateful. And also I breathe. The breath is so important, and to just breathe and to realize that everything's really okay. Like, the mind is the only thing that can tell you that you're not okay, that can make you believe that you're not okay, and to come
the
back
breath
into
is the gateway to everything.
It is.
As soon as we feel like fear or stress, we go, we like don't even take that
choke
full
up.
breath.
Yeah, literally. And it puts our body into a whole state of this disarray, and all these stress hormones that we start producing, and before you know it, you're in a very ungrounded state. So it's definitely and that's also like with this Uranus and Aries, it's becoming more aware of the way that we work, that our physical vessel, which we need to be connected to live on this planet.
And as we do more of our work, as we grow as conscious beings, the more we become aware of those moments where our breath shortens and we don't have the energy to work with, the breath, the life energy to work with what's in front of us, confronting, the moment that shocked us, that took our breath away. And, the more we work on it, the more we know those moments where we have to just go, so.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you watch Ralph Smart? Have you heard of him?
Oh, I love Ralph Smart.
I love it.
The way he's like
yeah.
breathing.
Like, but that's literally, it's like, woo, breathing in that good ass prana, baby. I love that.
He made it so like marketable too. It's like, man, anyone who hears that just immediately understands.
Yeah. He's a very good embodiment of a Pisces energy, like type of energy, but that's also very connected and grounded, to that Virgo, like his videos always in nature and always starting by tuning in with the breath and like the cat down the road and very like I love him. Yeah, he's very beautiful, so very beautiful. And it's about that. It's about going outside and when you start your day and taking more time before you maybe jump into something that might be stressful or might be difficult for you, because we're also human beings, which is something I also want to draw attention to. Is we also have to be compassionate with ourselves, and we're living in a time that's pretty difficult. Like pretty difficult. That's fair. Like that's difficult. There's no way around that. And so these ways of connecting to ourselves in a more loving way and to our bodies are so essential, especially during these days. And something I give astrological coaching sessions, and something I tell all my clients is put down or put 3 notifications on your phone, spread them throughout the day, that remind you just to take 2 minutes to just breathe consciously and see the difference that will make throughout your day, right? Is when you can, even if you just take 3, or even if you start with 1, like I give them 3 because I know that's very important, the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. But even if you just take 1 moment in your day to just center back into the present moment and to really, what we just did, really start breathing and start connecting and start feeling your body and your presentness, that will realign you. And that will also give your body a signal of you're okay, it's fine, everything's cool, everything's chill. And that will boost your productivity levels. It will boost your positive hormones. It will boost your endorse everything. That literally, it breathes your cells, and that's the most important thing.
One moment I can think of that a lot of people could use a couple of breaths is just thinking about how much going to the grocery store has changed, how much energy is at the grocery store. I used to just jump out of the car and like run around the store with my cart, like racing on it. And now there's so much tension in there. I have to like sit in the car for a few seconds and take a few breaths, be like, all right, prepare yourself, because there's a lot of energy in that store right now.
I love that you mentioned that, because I've also been having a difficult time with that. Like I kind of avoid grocery stores as much as I can, and I try to go to farmers markets instead now and just live with. I mean, it's a good change, because now I'm buying more local produce and I'm supporting smaller scale farmers. But there are times where I have to go to the grocery store because I can't buy rice at the farmer's market, or I can't buy coconut milk, like these are certain things that I do have to go to grocery stores for. But what you were saying, like I noticed,
so hydrating.
Yeah, man, like I just made some fresh coconut milk today and yesterday with my blueberry smoothie, and it was so, speaking of, that was so good. Like
that's amazing.
Yeah, I'll give you the recipe for that one. But that type of stuff makes my day. But to get those ingredients, sometimes you do have to go to the grocery store. And I noticed that energy you're talking about. Like everyone's afraid and tense and it's like everyone sees each other as like a potential biological threats to,
Yeah,
like
yeah. I
it's
want to
literally
see
like
people smile when I accidentally bump into them, not like, get all crazy on me.
freak out. Yeah. And I feel you on that. It does require like you need to shift into a certain consciousness and be like, you know what, I understand that I'm entering a grocery store, and I understand that there's going to be a certain presence, and I discern, which is also Virgo. I stay grounded in myself, and I discern what is
Mhm.
mine and what isn't, because especially for us empaths, and I know there's a lot of people that are listening to this, and people that listen to spiritual related things in general are very sensitive and empathetic, and especially for us, um, it's very important to discern, because we can really start to pick up on that energy and sometimes even start to identify with it. Like I used to do that a lot. Like when I would be in a very tense situation, I would start to feel tense, and I would think it was me or something, and I would be like, why do I feel so weird all of a sudden? And the energy would stay in my system for the rest of the day.
When it wasn't
And
your energy to begin
it
with.
wasn't. No, it's just me that's picking it up and collecting it in my, like a sponge, like just absorbing it, and it stays in me. And that's why it's so important, like you said, to just before you go. For me, I hold my crystals, or I smell some grounding essential oil, um, just to take a moment before you embark on these things that might be difficult or taxing on your system, to really ground, to really connect with that Virgo energy of just being very grounded and discerning, and being like, okay, you know what? I'm fine, I'm safe, I'm beautiful, I'm whatever. I'm just gonna own this grocery store trip. I'm
Hmm.
gonna get my stuff, and I'm gonna enjoy getting it, because I need these ingredients to make like a delicious meal, and to just stay in a positive vibe. It's very important to have these little rituals throughout our day where we can re-anchor ourselves into a positive state of mind, a positive vibration.
Hmm.
And
And you've
mm,
mentioned just quite a few anchors right there, using an essential oil, using
yeah,
breath. Like there's
yeah,
so many different ways for us to capitalize on being conscious beings and use all the tools at our disposal, just like the moon today, to even have this conversation because it's so relevant.
right, right,
And
yeah.
and yeah, just grow this awareness of all these critical moments where we're going to need more awareness, more presence, more self-love, or just more spaciousness.
Spaciousness. I love that. Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's definitely the theme for this one, is creating more space within ourselves and to be more present, for sure.
Mhm. One of my favorite arguments for the true sidereal system is thinking about it in terms of what the future is going to be for humanity. You hear Elon Musk talking all the time about how we're going to be on Mars really, really soon.
Nah.
And do people really think that seasonal astrology is going to pertain to a planet that has completely different seasons? Is it, once we move to another planet, aren't we going to just use the astronomy of whatever's around us, the local star systems? We go to Proxima Centauri 4 light years away, we're going to have a whole new set of constellations to deal with, and we're
Can
going to
you
have to report
imagine?
on all.
Can you imagine how cool that is? Like being on Mars and seeing Jupiter so much bigger in the night sky than from Earth's perspective, and then
Yeah,
seeing Earth as a planet. And like I'm told, like I would love to see the astrology from Mars's perspective, and the astronomy even, like, and maybe even being able to see Uranus like with the naked eye. Like this is so cool. Like I would love to go to Mars still in my lifetime, and be like a Martian astrologer or something. Like I would
yeah.
love that.
And
It's so
like,
cool.
what does it feel like to be on Mars? Is it just like Aries and Scorpio energy, where it's like, go after it, go get it, just take the initiative? And then what does that say about what Earth is to people on Mars? What do you think Earth represents astrologically from a place of Mars or the moon or something?
Very creative, organic. So what do I feel with organic? I feel like organic is very it's very earthy. I mean, obviously we're called planet Earth. It's very earthy, it's very grounded, but it's also a lot of water. So those two energies for sure, I feel like water and earth are very important. But I feel like creation is one of the biggest principles. Like it's Gaia as an energy and as a planet is in a process of constant creation and constant evolution. So I also feel like Earth represents growth. I feel like Earth would be the ruling planet of Virgo from Mars's perspective, something like that,
Yeah,
like
yeah, it
our
totally would.
yeah, or like and they call Venus Earth's twin, and I really resonate with that. I feel like Earth would be like exalted in Taurus, like in the way that Venus rules Taurus, that Earth would be
Yeah,
like exalted, because those are the things I feel like what Earth is really about is about evolving and creating more and more and more abundance and just flourishing and just thriving. And that's why we have so much biodiversity and so much life and just appreciating the beauty of that. And I feel like that's why humans came to Earth or were created, is to be appreciative of that process of creation and to observe it, because as we observe and appreciate the Earth, she also becomes more aware because we're part of her. So I feel like there's this, with Earth represents this awareness, this very grounded awareness of the beauty of creation, and becoming more conscious of creation. And
I get a mental image of someone like finding a stick in the woods and having it be like, oh, this is a wand. Like this isn't just a stick.
literally, yeah,
Yeah.
and realizing that they held the creative power all along in themselves and through the wand and through everything around us.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what Earth represents. But it's a good question. I haven't thought about it much, but that's my first intuitive feeling. Definitely a lot of creation energy.
Mhm.
Very, very beautiful creation goddess. Like
Yeah.
our planet. Very beautiful.
Another word that comes to my mind is like connection. The amount of
Yes.
life that's here, the integration of earth and water. Um, it seems like, especially from a Mars perspective, if it's so much Aries, it's so much Scorpio, it's kind of maybe even more like survival of the fittest, kind of go get it kind of lifestyle. Then an aspect that would complement this planet would be something like what we feel here on Earth, is connection and love and grace. But yeah, definitely, I really resonate with the Earth signs being attached to Earth as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then Mercury can stay with Gemini. Earth takes over Virgo for sure.
Yeah.
I used to not understand when I first started astrology, I used to not really feel the connection between Mercury and Virgo. Now I do feel it more because I realize, Mercury represents literally how we interact with the world. And that's also what Virgo represents on a level. It's like with your hands and creating and discerning. So it's definitely a very mercurial in that sense. But I also feel like there's this whole other dimension to Virgo, which is much more about just appreciating and being, and less interactive, which is Mercury is very interactive. It's like the messenger. It goes into the underworld and then it goes back to the gods, and then it brings back the information. And Virgo is also just about being and about being present and grounded. And I feel like that is what Earth represents. It represents that just presence of creation and just being there to witness it all and to see it all and to experience it all. And so I would say Mercury would be Gemini's ruler, and Earth would be Virgo's ruler for sure. Yeah, for sure.
How I always saw the connection of Virgo and Mercury and like Gemini and Mercury was that the sun is like source for us. The sun is like, you know, pure essence kind of embodied. And then the closest planet to that, the closest sort of channel to that is Mercury. And that kind of represents like the first aspects of physicality from a place of source. And so I see it, you know, the divine feminine and the divine masculine being the perfect tools to represent communication from source.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. I've never looked at it that way, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So with
Mercury is on my ascendant, so I'm very tuned into that little guy, that trickster.
I'm
very
a
tuned into.
I'm a Taurus rising, and Taurus is ruled by Venus and the moon, and you know, that kind of brings me to Cancer, which is my sun sign, and right in the same house I have Mercury. And so it's like I feel very ruled by Mercury, even though it's not as in a prevalent spot in terms of the houses. I feel a lot of pull, like going towards Mercury, going towards my ability to communicate.
Because every time that Taurus energy is activated, it will also flow to your Mercury, which is in Cancer, you know, which is what rules the moon. And like you were saying, Taurus is where the moon is exalted. So I can definitely see how those energies blend for you. It's very interesting. Yeah.
So with the true sidereal system and us looking at like the relative size of each constellation, that also comes to say that the dates are a little different. And so for all those people out there who you know, very much identified with their Western system or the Vedic system, this is an opportunity to examine a new system, look at yourself from a new perspective, and just ask, does this resonate? Does this not? But yeah, just starting with the beginning of the calendar year, we have Capricorn, and that is January 20th to February 16th. And granted, these can vary between like 3 or 5 days. It's not exact. You know, cusps have influences on each other. It's not like it moves like 1 degree in the sky and suddenly you're a whole different person.
Yeah, and some constellations overlap a little bit. Like, for example, Aquarius and Pisces. They like north of the ecliptic, Pisces kind of overlaps with Aquarius south of the ecliptic. So there's, like you were saying, there you always have to consider the cusps, and the cusps are actually very interesting areas because they blend. You know, it's like a transition of Aquarius into Pisces, and also you can also then see like the similarities between those constellations. Like because all
and that kind of brings to the point of why the constellations are set up the way they are, why they represent each element that they do. This whole process of going from fire to earth to air to water is the alchemical process of inner transformation. So we start with fire, that's external feeling, that's extroverted feeling. You know, you're sensing, you're feeling the warmth from afar. You get to earth, and that's kind of trying to introvertedly think about what you had just felt. And then you go to air, and you're thinking, okay, I want to think extrovertedly. You know, air is very much logical. It's like kind of moving a bunch of pieces around. It's trying to figure out the outside world, and then returning back to feeling with intuitive feeling. With water, water is the end of the cycle, but it's also after you've gone through the full cycle, you know, you felt something externally, you thought about what it means to you, and then you try to, you know, test and see what that could mean in a new version of reality for you. And then taking that in intuitively, feeling that you'll have come full circle. You'll have had an entire genesis, and then we return to fire again. We return to extroverted feeling. You know, we've come full circle. Now we want to reach out again.
Yeah. Wow. That's a very beautiful way of describing that cycle. And I also feel like they also, each of the elements have like like as you were saying, a creative principle. And fire marks the start, right? It's like the also organic life was created through volcanic activity, through the Earth's crust being active, like spewing lava, and the warmth and the heat and the energy. That's fire, you know, that's the spark of life. And that spark then initiates life, which gives it form, which is Earth, you know, the form. And then the air represents the communication that is necessary to keep that form alive. So that's your communication to your surroundings, and in taking in that data from outside through even food, like something like, you know, the food you eat is also information, and that's also air. It's like the information we need to feed the earthly, so that in order to stay alive, and that's again water then also being the element of life that needs to nourish us, and that needs to keep us alive and feeling. And then also water then again starting the cycle where water is necessary to sprout the seed that then blooms into new life, and that's again the fire, you know. So it's definitely and that's what I do. That's the thing I do like about giving a little bit of credit here to also our Western astrology brothers. That's something I do like about Western astrology, is the seasons, that they work with the seasons, because the seasons represent that cycle of fire, earth, you know, water, or air and water.
And that's probably one of the strongest aspects of seasonal astrology, is looking at that alchemical process.
Yeah, definitely. So that's why I learned a lot from before I switched over to sidereal. I learned a lot from Western astrology, especially because of the beautiful resonance with the elements that I really loved. I loved learning about the elements. That was probably one of my favorite parts of astrology, and I'm resonating so much with my Libra placements, which no matter what system you place me in, Vedic, sidereal, Western, I will have a shit ton of Libra no matter what. And then reading about, okay, Libra is an air sign, and air represents freedom and free flowing and intellectual faculties and communication and diplomacy. And I was like, man, that's really me. And just really embodying my element by understanding it. And yeah, that was my favorite. That was for sure my favorite part of astrology. For sure.
You know, and for all those people that are like thinking, you know, oh, I'm not a Libra anymore, like, you most definitely have some sort of Libra placement, or the house that's Libra's in is very pivotal for you. You know, there's so much. As soon as you look at one aspect of something, something else will reveal itself. And you know, it's not going to change who you are. You'll just gain a new understanding of aspects of who you are.
Yeah. And you know what's tying into that, you know, it's beautiful. Like when I was in my sidereal, or when I was still very much resonating or working with my Western chart, which has a lot of Scorpio. In my Western chart, I have my ascendant in Scorpio. I have my Mercury, Pluto, Mars all aligned in Scorpio. So that's, and on the ascendant. So that's a lot of Scorpio energy. And coincidentally, when I was really strongly resonating with that, was also the time in my life where I was going through a dark night of the soul, you know? So I was, everyone, like most people that wake up go through a dark night of the soul, no matter if you're a Scorpio or not. But because I was so in that energy, I was really resonating with Scorpio energy in general, because that was the biggest energy I felt present in my life at the time. So that was a beautiful, I loved that period of resonating with my Western chart. But then once I started to switch over to my my sidereal chart was a totally different type of energy during my life. And I really started to resonate with my Libra ascendant because I started to, and that really, really still, and also like evidentially resonates, because there's this thing as something resonating by the way that you interpret it, you know. But my Libra rising really like resonates, and it's also something that if I film myself, or if I record myself, or if I ask someone to observe me and describe me, they will describe and I will observe that Libra ascendant, which is people, the Libra ascendants, we tend to be very sociable, very people pleasing, always charming, always like holding space for the other person, wanting to be liked, wanting to be appreciated, you know, like always bringing good vibes to the table, trying to keep the peace and kind of the diplomacy. And that's something I do that. And even though like I might on a deeper level not completely not like that person, or completely not like the situation, I will always have that, which is the ascendant, that front, you know, that's the ascendant, it's that front, that sense of self, that created self. And once I understood that from my sidereal perspective, that just made so much sense. And I was also able to much better work with that energy and understand it. So I definitely recommend, as Tristan said, you know, give sidereal a chance, see what resonates, and you will see that sometimes you know your Western chart also resonates, because like you said, there's usually, if your sun is in Libra in Western astrology, you will have placements in Libra, Mercury, Venus, perhaps also in Libra in sidereal. So there will be overlaps with the constellations, no matter which system you use. But sidereal does, what I've noticed is it does, when people start to really get into it, it does make sense on a more tangible level, where you really, you know, where you can really observe these things in your personality and in your stories and in your interactions.
And just
And
like
of
how you
course,
thought you had so many Scorpio placements, come to find out your North Node, your true node, is in Scorpio. There was still so much truth to that.
yeah, yeah, and I was learning to become comfortable with Scorpio energy during that time. And that's what the North Node lesson is. It's like with Scorpio, it's about trust and learning how to trust, and learning how to protect your boundaries, and learning how to discern, which is ties in with my Virgo Sun and Jupiter. You know, like this energy of discerning. But then with the Scorpio North Node is trusting that what I'm feeling or what I'm discerning is the truth. And that's something that I'm still learning. I'm still growing in, and it's still not comfortable sometimes, because my mind in Libra, my Mercury in Libra wants to only see the positive, the beautiful, the balance, the harmony, and would rather keep that, you know, would rather not, what's the expression here? I would rather not ruffle my feathers, or, you know, test the waters. But the Scorpio North Node is actually asking me to do just that, to just, you know, like trust my instinct and trust the vibe. And now especially during 2021, I'm really learning to do that. I'm really learning to step out of that comfort Taurus North South Node, that comfort area, and that just sticking to what I know, and to not pushing too much, and just really allowing myself to just dive deeper into these areas of how much do I trust myself, how much do I trust other people, and 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 I also feel like these North Nodes, they give us gifts. I don't know if you've noticed that also with yourself, like when there were like when I got into astrology, there was actually a very intense um, sidereal Scorpio season going on, and my North Node was massively being impacted by a lot of things, like full moons and like eclipses and all of these things. And during that time is when I really started to be able to see people's shadow. Like I started to be able to discern and feel people's shadow, like feel their doubt or feel their distrust towards me sometimes, or their jealousy or their envy or their resentment, which is also what Scorpio deals with. It's like what's hidden beneath the surface. Someone can be like, oh my God, I love you so much. You're awesome. You're beautiful. But then deep down, they just hate your guts and they just don't like you and they just, resent you. And Scorpio is about being able to tune into that deeper level and discern, see. It's like the Scorpion's eye, which is where my North Node is. It's in this, like the three stars of the Scorpion's head. A crab, and I don't know what the other one's called. My North Node is in a crab, so it literally is in the eye of the Scorpion. So that literally means that my life path, my life energy, what my soul wants to experience and grow in, is seeing the truth and not being afraid to admit that I see the truth, and to trust that I see the truth, and to trust that I feel what's really going on here.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Scorpio represents truth. And like,
yeah,
for a Libra rising, it definitely comes down to being impersonal about that truth.
there you go to the next level, because now I'm still learning how to see it. But I feel like the next step, which is interesting because Libra is the ruler of my first house, and that's where the North Node is. So it is the ruler of my North Node. So it does tie into what you were saying, is like, even if I see the truth, still remaining in that Libra diplomacy and not because I have the tendency to, when I see the truth or when I feel the truth, I instantly become very like defensive. Like, for example, if I feel like someone has envy or jealousy towards me, I'm like, shit, maybe I need to cut cords, or put up a boundary, or just. But I'm now learning to balance Libra, that discernment and that seeing the truth and trusting that I see the truth, with also just being impartial and being okay and being like, you know what, that's okay, that's them, that's life, where no one's perfect. I have my shit. Like, I'm not one to judge, which is Pluto and Libra. Like, I think our Pluto and Libra generation has to learn to be less judgmental. Like, I feel like that's a really big shadow of Pluto and Libra, as we're quite judgmental.
Yeah, I was talking to my fiance about that the other day, because she also shares Pluto and Libra. And I feel like a good rule of thumb for all of us is to remember that we can't simultaneously like love something and judge it at the same time. Judgment comes from having felt like we received enough awareness of something that we kind of already know about it. And it's just kind of saying, like, do I need to be making a judgment with what I have right now? Or should I open up the channel again? Should I perceive more awareness to possibly see more of the humanity of this shadow that I've been perceiving?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Judgment is just closing off that channel and assuming that you have the information, that you have enough information to make that judgment, which 99% of the time is bullshit, because your perception is just one of many, and perception changes from moment to moment and from situation to situation, and it's much more I feel like that's the transcended version of Pluto and Libra, or the lesson is to perceive the balance in all things through the existence of shadow and of light, and of this yin and yang energy, and of being able to transcend judgment, because judgment is creating a separation between those things. But Pluto and Libra wants us to see that it's all necessary for the balance, right? It's all necessary for there to be life, for there to be this world that we're living in, and that's beautiful. That's part of the order, the cosmic order, which is also Libra. It's the cosmic order of things. It's just the way that our creator, like the universe, was designed, and how it maintains its own equilibrium. And Pluto in Libra is really about understanding that on the deepest level, by also finding our equilibrium point and being able to release things that remove us from that equilibrium point. And one of those things is judgment, because judgment is the assumption that you have all the data to make a definitive evaluation about someone or something, and detach yourself from that. It's like, oh, that's outside of me. But Pluto and Libra is actually a big ass mirror. It's like it, what you're judging outside of you, you're actually judging within
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
once I
Libra being an air sign, being that extroverted thinking, it really goes to show that a judgment isn't good or bad. A judgment is just how we get a handle on something, how we can
yeah,
see it and conceptualize the awareness of what we are aware of.
yeah, yeah, literally. That's a next level. It's releasing judgment over judgment.
Mhm.
Oh, that's cool. Because I sometimes judge myself for judging.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really meta there. Like I catch myself judging, and then I'm like, why are you judging? Why are you judging? And then, and then I'm like judging my judgment. And that's also, I feel like, a very I would say a very Mercury and Libra, but also of course Pluto and Libra. It's like I have this hyper awareness of myself and of my,
Mhm.
and also all of this energy being in my ascendant and my first house. I actually came to that today. I was like, I'm a hyper vigilant person of, like, I'm hyper conscious of myself,
It's
of
like
my
it's like you're
thoughts,
always
and
playing Mario and there's like that little cloud
yeah,
person on the camera like looking
yeah,
around
yeah,
you.
yeah, 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 yeah. Literally, that's literally how I feel. And it's so funny because when I talk to some other people and I connect to other people, they have a totally different frame. Like some people are so focused on their jobs, or like on, their roles, and on maybe like something outside of themselves, or maybe just a completely different inner process. And that's what's so beautiful, is like how astrology gives us insight into our unique configuration. And it's also like, then you can also understand, for example, in my case, that's why I'm always so like hyper aware and self-referenced, because that's literally like I'm sorry, but all of my planets are
On that
on the
one
side
side.
of, yeah, on the side, literally. Like my only
Yeah.
one is Saturn retrograde, and it's retrograde, so it's, even then, it's turned inwards, it's turned backwards, it's not moving forward, it's not moving outside, but it's like internal. It's like that internal energy, which is what a
Yeah.
retrograde planet in your chart means. It's that energy is turned inwards.
You
So
know,
even
there's so
then,
much that people could learn from, like, say you were in a group chat with everyone who
yeah,
was born within a week of you and they were just born at different times. So like everyone who has like a main focus in the first house is talking to everyone who has a main focus in the seventh house. And like they're all just like, yo, I understand myself more because you understand this aspect of yourself more.
yeah, I have it with your fiance, by the way.
Yeah.
We were born 9 days apart, and we have a lot of similar placements in the signs and the planets. But our charts, she has all of her like most of her planets, I feel like, almost opposite of me.
Yeah.
So
It's like
on the
first and
other side of,
seventh.
yeah, other side. So it's interesting to see the similarities that we feel, but also the differences in which those similarities play out in our physical reality, or the emphasis we place on certain things. Like, and that's why our lives are so different, even though we have similar placements. And that's the beauty of astrology. It's an endless vortex of information. Like the more you
Yeah.
understand, the more there is to understand. The deeper you go, the deeper you see that the whole goes. It's like it's this endless resource of self-discovery and self-potentiation. That's how I see it. And anyone that is really passionate about, like me, for example, and like you, about self development and self understanding,
Mhm.
I feel should have some. You don't have to be like, you don't have to go super deep, but have some uh, um, cognizance of the lunar cycles. Like your personal planets, your north node. I feel like these are just such helpful things to understand about yourself, that can really also make your life much more symbolic, and also really understand why certain cycles or certain narratives have played out in your life or are playing out in your life. And that
Mhm.
can bring you so much peace, because then with that understanding, you can let go of maybe some of the confusion, or maybe some of the why am I going through this, or why is this something that keeps repeating itself.
Or someone
And
trying to like force something that is just not going to go.
no, I'm sorry. Like, for example, if you if you're a Libra, or sorry, if you're a Leo moon, and you had parents that were constantly telling you, like, like, be less vain, or like, I don't know, or don't ask other people for validation, or don't look for validation outside of yourself, or don't value the way that things look, or that you look. That's just not going to cut it, because a Leo moon needs that. It's
Mhm.
literally like it's their moon, so they need to feel pretty, they need to feel valued, they need to feel honored. Like,
Mhm.
Leo moons need to feel like they're a queen or a king. Like, they need to feel that energy.
And
They
that's
don't
what
pers-
my
they're-
fiance's moon is in. And my Ceres, which is the planet of nurturing, is in Leo.
Oh, there you go. So that's a
Yeah.
perfect match. You can fulfill those needs for sure then. Just giving that validation and that appreciation, and making her feel like a queen. While a
Mm.
Leo sun would be someone that doesn't per se need to feel that, but they just express that,
Yeah, they
like,
just
no
naturally
matter if
exude it.
someone's go yeah, so, and that's the beauty. Like, it's the beauty of how the Leo energy gets expressed through a different, and that's why I like psychological astrology as well. It's like a different faculty within our psyche, or within our energetic system. We have all these um, components, that form the whole as well.
Uh,
But astrology is about kind of discerning the components and how they relate, and seeing how, for example, a Leo moon, and how they still have that Leo, both that Leo essence, but they express it in completely different ways. It has a form in a completely different faculty. The moon being the needs, and the inner world, and the inner sensations, and the sun being more like the central light, and just what you exude, and what gives you a sense of purpose.
mhm. I feel like this is a good opportunity to talk about those various faculties and explain, just like in an info dump essentially, of what each planetary body is and how that, and what sort of influence that has on us. So, of course, we start with the sun sign. The sun is our essence. That's very much just what we naturally exude. Our rising sign is kind of like our first appearance, first impressions. I've heard it talked about as like if you're driving down a street and you see like a yard and on the house, that's kind of like the first impressions. It's not going to tell you
Yeah,
how good the structure of the house is or anything, but you
yeah,
get an
yeah,
idea.
yeah.
And we have Mercury. Mercury is communication. It's how we think. Um, I mean, they're all pretty quick explanations, but the moon is our emotions. The moon is constantly going through that alchemical cycle. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and then we have
It,
Mars. Mars is our action energy. It's our for men. It's how we like to make love. for ladies is what they appreciate in love. And then, Mars represents, action. It can represent sex as well. And then we have, past the asteroid belt, Jupiter. Jupiter is bringing us growth. It's bringing us expansion. It's the biggest planet. It's bringing all that bigness. Wherever Jupiter is going to bring abundance to us.
Yeah. It's the big, I call it whenever I like to give planets these characters to make it more accessible to my friends, because they don't know astrology, but I like to talk about astrology. So I want to make it understandable to them. And I say Jupiter is that wise sage uncle person in your life that if you need wisdom, or if you need someone to make you feel, good, or if you need to understand something, you go to Jupiter and he will like give you that wisdom, or he will give you that insight. He will imbibe you with the basically the wine of life, and just make you feel expansive and make you feel like more understood and more expanded, like growing. So Jupiter is really about just that supportive energy that just wants to see you thrive, and that gives you blessings and opportunities for that thriving. So it's higher education, that's an opportunity to grow. It's spirituality, that's an opportunity to grow and connect and to expand. And once I started to see it through the eyes of characters, it became much more accessible also to other people that were not as well versed in astrology, but that could relate to those characters. And for example, Saturn, like I love that one. Saturn, is the strict sage, the strict mentor. That's like, okay, Jupiter is like all about like giving you the intel and like the blessings and the opportunities. But Saturn is like, what, son, what, child, you've been given a body and like a capable mind and a capable pair of hands. What are you doing with it? You have like one lifetime on earth. Make something of yourself, create something. Like you have a responsibility to create something. So Saturn
really represents like the strict father.
It does, yeah. It's like it's teaching us to use our God-given skills and abilities and be disciplined in that and committed, and then we will see the results that we so desire to see, which is more like Jupiter's energy is more about the results and like the things we then get from that hard work, the rewards. And then Uranus comes to another level and that's beautiful actually, because that's where our ancestors stopped. They stopped at Saturn because they couldn't see Uranus. They couldn't perceive it to the it wasn't observable to the naked eye. So Saturn literally also represents that point, that cutoff point, that physical boundary of our 3D reality, of our world around our physical world. And Uranus represents the transcendence of that, where we started to develop tools to perceive reality from a new way, telescopes in this case. And Uranus represents literally that consciousness of innovation, of moving beyond our physical limitations, and of growing in our consciousness and our awareness of the world around us, and expanding that consciousness and up-leveling it. So it's the planet of innovation, revolution. I call it the Einstein planet. It's like it's seeing
orbit
things.
Is like even on its side.
Yes,
too.
I love that. Like Uranus in every sense represents through its discovery, through the way it was discovered, through its characteristics, through its name even. Like it's such a quirky, funny, like often joked about, like weird name. Yeah, literally like it's like it's Uranus, So it's like it's this funny, weird, unconventional.
can't even call it Uranus. I have to call it Uranus. Just for the slight chance someone will make the joke and lighten up the moment.
You know what? You know what's funny? Like I feel like that's yeah. I feel like I sometimes need that. I sometimes need people to just bring me back to like a more like grounded, light, light-centered place. So that's one of the things that. But it used to trigger me. Like because I would go into these sometimes with friends. I would go into these I call them my astrological channeling moments where I'm just like doop, 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 and it's so much fun in my flow. And then I'll be like Uranus or Uranus, and then someone will start laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing about? I'm like sharing serious information here. And then they're like, yeah, because you said Uranus. I'm like, okay. And since that moment, I started to call it Uranus. But yeah, I feel like that doesn't do it justice. It's just Uranus.
That is so powerful though, that like the aspect of Uranus was so pivotal to it being discovered with newer innovations. Like that must have been so mind-blowing to the astrologers of that age. They were like, holy shit, there's another planet.
Yeah. And that's why I love why I love so much like all these newer planets and bodies coming into mainstream astrology now, like Aries and
I really like the four horsemen asteroids. Ceres, Vesta, Pallas, and Juno.
Yeah, me too. And just these newer energies coming in as we understand our solar system better. And then we start to see that it's just basically an organism as well. Like sometimes when I want to help people understand that astrology is like literally a science of the solar system, of our solar system and of our planet, I liken it to a molecule, like where the sun is the nucleus, or like an atom, sorry. The sun is the nucleus, and like the planets represent the electrons. And this is something that's true for atoms as well. When electrons all have their own path, and like the bigger the atom, the more electronic paths you have, like the electronic cycles. And when they align a certain way, when electrons move, and they come to certain points and aspects, they also have a certain what they call valence or electromagnetic property that also affects the nucleus and affects the entire atom. And that's how an atom basically stays in form. It's like this. It's not like a solid thing. It's like energy moving and interacting and making aspects to itself. And that's kind of what astrology also is. It's like you have to see these planets as electrons that are making aspects to each other. And each aspect has a certain valence or a certain property that then sends a certain electromagnetic pulse through our solar system. And that's the beauty of understanding aspects. Like, for example, when Uranus and Neptune are together, like that's a certain impulse. When the sun and moon are together, that's a certain impulse. And that when you start to understand it from that perspective, that's when it gets really fun, is that you see that it's just a bunch of cycles that have their interactions, and each interaction has a certain potential that it creates.
Man, it'd be cool to do a whole other episode comparing astrology with quantum mechanics and chemistry.
Yeah. Because the way I explained it was just very basic, but you can go very deep into that and see how the universe is like this fractalized. Like this, it's basically this fractal reality, right? Where the macro scale is the same as the micro scale, like the structures and the geometry and everything. Like basically the whole universe could technically be like just one atom in another animal from another universe. That's the
like you could just keep scaling out and it would become the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, literally. And I really believe that, because that's the microscopic level that we're now seeing, you know, like where we thought electrons were the smallest things. Oh no, it's the quark, or no, it's actually something. Yeah, it keeps going. It keeps going smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's all about in the end, it's all about energy and a cyclical, like everything is cyclical. Everything is just energy rotating around itself and in a cycle. And that's also what astrology represents. It represents the cycles of the cosmos and the cycles of our solar system, and how those cycles influence the cycles on Earth and our own personal cycles. And that's where I love astrology. I love connecting my life, my cycles, to the cycles of the moon, the cycles of Venus, the cycles of the sun, and really seeing how that benefits my life and how that makes me feel more aligned with myself. Yeah.
You know, and just speaking about how much Uranus brought innovation, through that innovation, we discovered the next planet, which was that of wisdom. And so like it fits so perfectly. It's like it couldn't have been written if it was a movie. Like it's just,
yeah, it is a movie.
Yeah. But yeah, Neptune being the planet of wisdom, being of water, you know, so much of the inner side, you know, the etheric side of astrology is represented by that wisdom. And for so many of like the 90s babies, the 91 through 95, we had a alignment of Uranus and Neptune, which made us, as you had once said, like spiritual revolutionaries.
Yeah, that's what I call, I want to write an article about that. That's one of my favorite aspects, and one of the aspects I've channeled the most is that aspect, because I feel like that's the defining aspect for our generation. Because that alignment doesn't happen often, and especially not in Sagittarius, which is the sign of truth. You know, so we are literally spiritual warriors, spiritual revolutionaries, people that are here to transcend in consciousness and up level in consciousness, to connect on a deeper level to wisdom, to spiritual truth, to source, which is also Neptune. It's like where we transcend logic and metaphysics, which is still Uranus and consciousness, and where we just remember that we're all one, you know, that it's all just one field. And with that being in Sagittarius, we're here to anchor in belief systems and ways of seeing our reality and understanding our reality that match that truth of Uranus and Neptune. So it's a beautiful aspect, and I see it in almost all my friends in some way from my same generation. We're not here to fit the mold. We're not here to stay within the conventional order of things. We're here literally as activators of a new spiritual paradigm. We're the seeders of that paradigm. And the next generations are the ones that are going to really bloom.
Because Uranus is pulling ahead there. So Uranus is pulling the innovation that is the wisdom.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I feel like both of those planets, Neptune and Uranus, are pretty happy in Sagittarius. So that makes the conjunction extra powerful. Like neither of them, Uranus loves Sagittarius needs for freedom and exploration. And Neptune really loves Sagittarius's focus on the truth and finding personal wisdom. So they both love being there, and connecting there was just a very powerful alignment that we all have if we are from our generation. So that's 1991 till 1995. I believe the strongest influence was from 1992 to 1994 or 1993. That's when they were like really cazimi, like really like on top. Like in my chart, like that's why I love that conjunction so much. They were exact, like by the
Yeah.
minute, like by the height, by the hair. Like I think also in your fiance's chart, like they were on top of each other.
Hmm.
But that in that entire generation has that element, and I'm now seeing that play out in my own life, and especially as Pluto moved over that conjunction in my chart, like last I think 2 years ago, but it's basically been affecting that conjunction for the past 2 years. Now it's kind of removing itself from that. But Pluto being the transformational planet, I really felt that conjunction point being activated and stepping into the power of it. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I will write an article about that someday. Like there's so much to say
Yeah.
about that. There's so much to say about it.
So the last one that we have is Pluto. Pluto.
Speaking of Pluto,
Yeah, NASA tried to say it's not a planet. It's still a planet to astrologers.
and it's a big ball planet in astrology.
Yeah,
It's a big hitter, yeah, for sure.
representing the eighth house of death, sex, transformation, the underworld, somewhat of the subconscious. Anywhere where Pluto is in our charts is highlighting some sort of magic that we have, some sort of ability to transform. And yeah, it also speaks for a generation, just like Neptune and Uranus.
Yeah.
Like so much of the baby boomer generation had Pluto in Libra, or not Libra, Leo. Like they were very unapologetic about with the things that they wanted to change. They were very grandiose. They lived lavish lives. They were comfortable. They were hardworking. Yeah.
And Pluto kind of likes being in Leo.
Yeah.
He likes that. He likes that power, that liony fierceness. So yeah, I definitely feel like the baby boomer generation definitely has that very strongly, that characteristic that you were describing, for sure.
And then like our parents from Gen X, they were very much the Pluto and Virgo. They were very like structured, that they wanted a little bit more structure than their parents. And they're very like organized. They're very like grind oriented.
Yeah, like go to university and get your degree oriented. Yeah, literally. Yeah.
And into this next generation with Libra, we're like, yo, that's not in alignment. That's not balanced with me. Like, and then even going further, and then you have the Scorpios. Like, yeah, every generation has something to learn from each other. But we can't be imposing.
I'm so excited. Well, I don't know if excitement is the right word, but I'm so curious to see what happens when Pluto shifts into Capricorn, because I feel like that is when we will really start to see physical, I would say, a physical destructuring, delayering of our realities, where like there's so much beliefs being exposed and challenged, and news and truth is like all of these things are coming up, like what's true, what isn't, like all of these things around truth and our ways of believing and our beliefs about life are really being challenged and transformed right now. But I feel like when Pluto hits Capricorn, I feel like that's really going to be like a demolition period where like
the rubber's gonna hit the road.
Yeah, literally, where the old reality and like the old systems are really going to crash. Because a lot of Western astrology, Pluto is already in Capricorn. But that's also why I switched over to sidereal. One of the reasons is because I don't feel that yet. I don't feel like that Pluto and Capricorn energy of of destruction. I don't feel like that's really there yet. I feel like we're still in the phase of manipulation and playing with the truth, and like the way that our
Mhm.
realities are perceived and what is true, what's not, like information. It's still really in that sphere. That's where
Well,
the shadow, the collective shadow is at right now, right?
I definitely think that, like, whatever sort of possibilities are there for bright awareness, for innovation and positive change, there's going to be, a heavy resistance from those who want things to stay the same. So they want, to go back to an old way. And we just have to keep riding those waves. We have to keep, staying positive. And, maybe I personally think that Pluto Capricorn time, it definitely will change a lot of systems, but I think we'll also see a lot of building, seeing how much
Yeah,
Capricorn is about hard work and dedication.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it's that's the rebuilding part, because in order to rebuild or to recreate something, you have to first take apart, what was there first. So that's a very normal part of the process. And when once you take it apart, you can reassemble it and create something new from that. So then that's again the alchemical process of recycling and the phoenix rising from the ashes. What was destroyed gives gives soil and fertilizes the new. So I definitely feel like that period, especially also with Saturn then being in Aquarius, um, lots of opportunity for new communities, new earth communities to start thriving and to start rebuilding and
Mhm.
really manifesting things that we're now thinking about with Neptune and Jupiter. Neptune being in Aquarius for so long and Jupiter also being there now. Really like these things that we were already envisioning and feeling and dreaming about will then become tangible and reality.
It'll be
Definitely.
the culmination of this spiritual revolutionary generation.
Yes, that's our time. I mean, it's already our time. It's always our time, but
Yeah, it's
you as an
becoming more and
astrologer,
more of our
yeah,
time.
yeah, as an astrologer, you can always look forward to certain things, and that's definitely something I'm looking forward to. We also have a beautiful alignment of Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces, I think in 2023 or 24. I
Mhm.
think that is going to be a beautiful day to look out for, where I was channeling that and I was just seeing a lot of redemption, a lot of gratitude coming in, and a lot of an up leveling of our connection to source and our ability to just be at peace and to just be at one with everything. And Neptune and Jupiter being rulers of Pisces, and like it's just beautiful. It's a really beautiful and powerful energy that
Mhm.
Jupiter is going to be expanding for us in 2023. And I feel like that's opening also the ingress of Pluto into Capricorn. So definitely, guys, like okay, so um, like 2020 was difficult. 2021, still a lot of lessons and integration, especially from the past year. But know that, especially for people that are now working on their consciousness and becoming more conscious and stepping into their purpose and their mission, know that there's so much beautiful alignments and energy and opportunities coming our way. And even now, already kind of now the doors are starting to reveal themselves, and the moment to step through them is definitely arriving, and there's a lot of beautiful stuff coming up for us,
Oh
especially
yeah,
I would say around 2000. I would say 2023 is really when the seeds start to sprout, right? That's
yeah.
really
The
when we
seeds
start
that
to
we're sowing today with this full moon
yes,
in Virgo.
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah.
Well, just to wrap up the idea of true sidereal for people, these are the dates for your sun
Mm.
sign. And granted, it does have a 3 to 4 or 5 day kind of variance, just because it's not perfect. But Capricorn, January 20th to February 16th. Aquarius, February 16th to March 11th. Pisces, March 11th to April 18th. Aries, April 18th to May 13th. Taurus, May 13th to June 21st. Gemini, June 21st to July 20th. Cancer, July 20th to August 10th. Leo, August 10th to September 16th. Virgo, September 16th to October 30th. Libra, October 30th to November 23rd. Scorpio, very, very short season, November 23rd to November 29th, only about 7 days. Ophiuchus, the 13th sign, the one that the eclipse, the elliptical orbit of our solar system still goes through the feet, but still very relevant. Ophiuchus is November 29th to December 17th. And then finally we have December 17th to January 20th, where it goes into Capricorn. Yeah, just a little bit about Ophiuchus, the 13th sign, for those who may be curious. Ophiuchus is represented by Chiron. Chiron is the asteroid of our wound, which also becomes our gift. It represents karma to an extent, as to how we got that wound and what we chose to do with it in order to make all of the things that have happened to us be something that serves us, tell our life stories in a way that empowers us. And Ophiuchus is represented by a man holding a serpent. It's representative of man wrestling with ego, and it really talks a lot about inner transformation, and either being very toxic or very transformational, but being just after Libra and Scorpio, you have very much the awareness of both sides, the awareness of the deep, and you're using that to transform.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love how Scorpio and Ophiuchus kind of follow each other up, also in their themes. Mm-hmm. where Scorpio represents that journey into the underworld, and led that journey into the shadow, and becoming empowered through the trials of the shadow. And then Ophiuchus represents that, okay, what do you do with that power? Like you can either, like you said, it can either become poison, it can be something that gets to your head and kills you, or you can use that power responsibly and heal, which is also, Ophiuchus also with the snake, which is a universal symbol of medicine, represents also healing, and like that's why Chiron rules it, like you were saying, is because it represents healing and overcoming our wounds and our shadow. So Scorpio is where you become aware of your shadow and you dive deep to it, and Ophiuchus is where you work with the power that shadow gives you in self-understanding to heal and to shed. It's also like, I remember the new moon in Ophiuchus last year was for me shedding so much shit. Like there, I remember that new moon cycle, like I was just letting go of so much shit, like just like literally I felt like I was a snake that was shedding its own skin and just letting go of so many layers. And that's really what Ophiuchus represents with the snake's symbolism. It's shedding, it's healing, it's transforming, it's the infinite cycle of transformation. As the snake bites its own tail, it's like the cycle of time, and how healing also and transformation ties into that. So it's beautiful because Scorpio and Ophiuchus both have to do with transformation. And I consider those signs also like little bit the darker signs, and they're so tied into each other in terms of mythology and also astrological.
It's interesting because Ophiuchus doesn't represent an element; it represents aether, which is considered like a fifth element. And
Yeah.
it being so close to Sagittarius, it also is very close to the galactic center. So all of that aether is coming from a place of immense energy.
Yeah.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the first True Sidereal podcast with the IllumiNation Network podcast. Thank you so much for coming on here, Casper, and sharing all of your insights
Hey,
and deep
my
knowledge.
pleasure. My pleasure. I loved it. I really did. Yeah.
Yeah, this was insanely fun. We'll have to do it again soon.
For sure. I mean, there's going to be plenty of new moons, full moons, and special events that, we can, and I can also see us doing more like group events as well, where we maybe do like, like group virtual ceremonies, or just where we can do these because when you were doing your breath work, I just felt like this is also something that we can bring to people, where we align the astrology with practical ways of implementing what the astrology is showing.
Definitely.
And that's something that we can all benefit from in this time, is more community, more connection, and more aligned living. So let's keep it up.
Mhm.
Let's keep doing these type of things and really planting those seeds for these type of things to grow, and for sidereal astrology to become more, I wouldn't say mainstream, but more within the main space stream of consciousness out
Yeah,
there, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ever since 2016, it's been going up on the trend, and people are going to know about it soon.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, do you have any projects coming up or anything you'd like to announce?
Well, I have a full moon ceremony tomorrow,
Okay.
a virtual one. That's going to be my first virtual ceremony, because until now I would do ceremonies out in nature, with meditation. But since last month we've been in a lockdown here on my island, so that's not possible anymore. So it's a really good opportunity for me to move these things to the online world, and also in that way be able to also have participants from the US and from Europe and from all over the place. So it's a good opportunity, definitely. And I feel
Nice.
like that's also what we're being asked to do, is to I would say transfer our services and our products and our gifts to the online world and to online communities. And so that's something that's coming up. I one of my things for this, as you were saying, as we're sowing the seeds this Aries season, one of my things is to be consistent with this. So to have something like this every full moon, every new moon. I want to start with that.
I agree.
So always look, if you're interested in syncing up, or if you're interested in my events, always look to these dates, full moon, new moon, and I will be doing something special for sure.
Awesome. Well, other than that, where can people find you?
So right now I'm working on my website, but for now you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Facebook, and you can also find me on YouTube, which is also something I'm going to start doing more frequently. But for now, I would say definitely follow me on Facebook and Instagram. That's where I'm most active right now.
Okay.
And stay tuned for my website and more YouTube uploads and all of that. And something I would definitely love to do is more podcasts like this, because I love to talk, I love to listen, I love to communicate, and
Yeah,
podcasts are the future for that, for
I
sure.
could do this all day, every day, forever. It's so
Yeah,
fun.
me too. Me too, literally. Oh, is that the full moon? No, I thought I saw the moon outside, but it's
Ooh,
just the lamp. It's just the lamp. But
it's just
I'm
starting to
good.
get dark here. I might have to go out and see it.
Yeah, I'm gonna check her out. I'm
Yeah.
gonna check her out. But thank you so much for this opportunity.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed it, and let's do this more often for sure. Let's keep the ball rolling.
Definitely. And for those listening, if you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comments section. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram. You can find Illuminations online at YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, Illumination PNW, or just Illumination on Facebook. We have a Facebook group to keep the conversation going there. And you can also find us on our website, as well as our services of astrology readings, chart creation, meditation, and psychedelic preparation integration. You can find that at www.illuminationnetwork.com. And thank you all for listening.
That's another one that we can do next time, by the way. The plants.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's another area.
That's a long podcast right there. There's so much information on that one.
Yeah, for sure. For next time.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks again,
All right.
man.
You
Thanks
too.
for listening, everybody. Take care.
Namaste. Take care, guys.